Now we're going to switch gears because here on Money Wise, it is Personal Finance Thursday, and we're going to talk a bit about protecting your investments. And there are estimates by the American Association of Retired Persons that about $40 billion are lost by Americans to fraudulent telephone salespeople. That includes as much as $410 billion spent on bad investment advice. Joining us today is Jenice Malecki, who is in private practice. She is an attorney who specializes on securities fraud, and she's joining us now to tell us how one can avoid those problems. Thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
How common is securities fraud?
Securities fraud is quite common. By the American Association of Retired Persons survey, you can see that billions of dollars of Americans' money is lost every year in investment-related frauds. And they start at the most basic frauds, high-pressure sales tactics, and move up to churning, unsuitable investments, unauthorized investments, and even go to the company level where class action securities litigation kicks in, where there are failures of companies to disclose certain important financial information.
What are the most common ways that people get scammed?
A common way someone is scammed is really a lot of brokers who are scamming individuals are pandering to their own greed and ego. An investor is encouraged to take speculative investment choices when they really haven't been informed of the risks. One of the most important things for an investor is information, to ask a lot of questions and not be intimidated by a broker into asking those questions.
You've mentioned the approach, which is appeal to greed, appeal to ego. But once that appeal is made, what are they doing? Selling phony stocks, stocks that are worthless? I mean, how are these scam artists making money on people like us?
Well, there are two different types, generally, of scams. There is a small brokerage scam in which small investment firms represent a syndicate of small firms that make the market in certain smaller stocks, often on NASDAQ, for example, or one of the smaller exchanges. And there are certain manipulations of the marketplace that occur in some of those small stocks. And the way that the manipulation often occurs is through a lot of the information and sales practices of these small firms.
All right, Jenice Malecki, we're going to ask you to stay with us. It's a fascinating subject. There is a lot to talk about. We're going to have more on ways you can avoid being scammed, and also later on in this half hour, how to protect yourself against debt and what to do if you are in debt. So stay with us. You're watching Bloomberg Money Wise. Welcome back. We're joined again by attorney Jenice Malecki. We continue our conversation on how investors can protect themselves from being scammed. What is investors should know before they start putting their money into the market?
Well, really, there's three things that the investors should think about right off the bat. The first thing they should think about is what their expectations are, what their investment objectives are, why they're investing. The second thing that they should know is who they're investing through. What do they know about the broker and the brokerage firm that they're investing through? There are wonderful ways you can get information about a broker through the NASD, NASDAQ's website, NASD regulation, NASDR.com. You can do an online search, or you can even call on the telephone and get background information to find out about their history in the industry and with any other complaints that there may be. You can also find out important details about companies that you're investing in, and you really should know something about the company that you're investing in.
What are the most common mistakes made by people who get scammed, and what do they do to protect themselves?
Well, the most common mistake is not to ask enough of questions, not to get enough information about the companies that they're investing in. Information they can get involves prospectuses, they can get public news releases, and quarterly reports, annual reports of the company. They can protect themselves by asking questions and understanding the company.
Well, all right. I get an annual report. If I knew how to read an annual report, I might not need a broker. If I'm a novice, the reason I'm turning to a professional is because this won't mean anything to me.
Right, but you need to ask the broker about the company and ask him what in the prospectus makes him recommend this investment to you. Your investment objectives and Bill Gates' investment objectives are very different. The risk tolerance is different. So you really need to ask questions. If you don't understand, that's exactly why you should be asking the questions and reviewing the documentation. It's like anything in life. You really need to do your homework.
Am I safer going to a well-known, big-name brokerage house on the assumption that if I am cheated by some bad broker, there are deeper pockets there?
I guess to some extent people would agree with that philosophy.
How do you feel?
Well, I think that you have to be careful no matter who you're investing through, because everybody has their first scam, everybody has their first problem, and it doesn't really matter where your broker comes from. It's really establishing a relationship with the broker and understanding who he is and what you're doing, keeping an eye on your own money. You work your whole life to save your money. To give it away to a broker in 5 minutes is a bad idea.
But all right, but if I'm scammed by someone who's then left town, I would assume I'm in a worse position than if I'm scammed by someone who works at, I don't want to mention a brokerage house, but a big-name brokerage house. At least there's someone I can go to. Is that not right?
Yes, although most brokerage firms vigorously defend securities cases, and most of them go to arbitration. So, you know, you really need to protect your rights by getting information up front. I mean, if you do have a problem, you would typically at the beginning of a relationship, you sign a new account form that has an arbitration agreement in it. So you'd be required to go to arbitration rather than court. Those are forums filled with industry participants. And you really would need to hire an attorney in order to really protect your rights and get your money back if you have been scammed.
What about insisting on malpractice insurance or making sure that an investment advisor is covered by malpractice insurance?
Well, the problem with the securities-related cases is that they typically involve fraud, because through the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Securities Acts of 1933 and 1934, most violations of the securities laws are somehow fraud-related, and it is very difficult, if not impossible, for someone to get insurance against their own fraudulent conduct.
All right. Jenice Malecki, you're an attorney specializing in investment fraud. We thank you so much. We'd love to have you back sometime. We'll talk more.